Hi everyone, my name is Robert, and I did my report on the Netherlands. And this picture here, I just basically just put the flag in the background. And yeah, so for the basic information on the Netherlands, so it's also known as Holland, but that actually just refers to like a certain region of it, which is just North Holland. And the population is 17,336,000 with a population density of 1,310.8 per square mile. It's a pretty like there aren't too many like rural areas in the Netherlands, so 91.5% of the population live in urban areas. The national language there is Dutch, and they drive on the right side, and they use euros for currency, and they're in the Central European time zone, which is pretty much the same time zone as the majority of Western Europe, aside from like the UK and Portugal. With the neighbors, so they only have a couple neighbors that they share a border with. They have Germany to the east, and they have Belgium to the south, and then to the north and west they have the North Sea, and then they share a maritime border with the UK. So for territories, they have a lot of former colonies such as Ghana, South Africa, Indonesia, Brazil, Sri Lanka, and Suriname. And you can see the influence in a lot of these places. Like I think there's like some Dutch cuisine that's similar to Indonesian cuisine, and in South Africa, their language is like really close to Dutch. And so for the current territories, they have the Lesser Antilles, which consist of Aruba, which was seized by the Dutch in 1636, and it became its own country in 1986. And then they have Curacao, which became a territory in 1954 and didn't become its own country until 2010. And then they have St. Martin, which became a territory in 1983 and also didn't become a country until 2010 when um, the Netherlands basically just gave them or like let them become their own countries. And then they have the Caribbean Netherlands, which consists of Bonaire, which was conquered in 1636, and they have a population of 20,104, and their economy is mostly based on tourism. And then there's Sabo, which was conquered in 1816 with a really small population of 1,915. And the currency they happen to use there is the US dollar. And then there's St. Eustatius, which joined the Netherlands Antilles in 1954. And they also have a pretty small population of 3,138. But it's unknown if there was a native population that existed there prior to the Europeans' arrival. So for cities, the capital is Amsterdam, and it's been the capital city since 1814. And they have a pretty high population of 1,423,000, and they have the busiest airport in the country. The city is known for having a lot of canals, and it's also just an important port city since it's like right on the sea. So for other cities, there's Rotterdam, which is also important for it's also an important port city, and they have a population of about almost 600,000, and they rival with Amsterdam just over like different things such as like their history, culture, and then football or soccer as we know it here. And then another city that they have there is The Hague, which has a population of 474,292 people. And even though Amsterdam is the capital, The Hague has the parliament. And then there's Utrecht, which has a population of 290,529 people. And it's pretty much like the college town in the Netherlands. And then the picture here, that's a picture of Rotterdam. So it's like a more modern city, like when you compare it to Amsterdam. So for the rural areas, they're like when it comes to the standards of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, there's there's technically no rural areas, but the countryside is seen as like an agricultural production zone. And when you like the people there basically see the like rural areas being located more in the northern part of the country. So with politics, it's been a constitutional monarchy since 1815, but it's also been a parliamentary democracy since 1848. The monarch serves as a representative head of state, and he's more symbolic. He doesn't have like any political power. And then the parliament has a lower house containing 150 members, which is basically just their House of Representatives. And then they have a Senate containing 75 members. And the current head of state is the king. It's King Willem Alexander van Oranje Nassau. And then the current prime minister is Mark Rutte, who's part of the People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, which is one of the more left wing parties in the country. So for terrain, they're part of like the more northern European lowland. The country's pretty flat. There's some hills in the southeast part of the country, but a big chunk of or a lot of the land in the Netherlands is actually reclaimed land because they don't have too much space to begin with. So historically, um, they just built these polders that they enclosed with these dikes that basically kept the water from like flooding in to the country. So 27% of the country is actually below sea level. Um, for mountains, the Netherlands is pretty flat, so they don't really have any mountains. But one of their territories, Saba, has Mount Scenery, which is almost 3,000 feet. And the highest point in the Netherlands is Valserberg, but it's not even a mountain. It's just a hill with a height of 1,058 feet. And then the lowest point is Zuidplaspolder, which is 23 feet below sea level. So for the rivers, the Rhine is the longest river in the Netherlands, and in Western and Central Europe, it's the second longest, and it passes through a total of 6 countries. Like it goes like from the Netherlands down to like Germany and just like further south. And it's a primary source of water for the households and agriculture that are like along the river. And then the second longest river in the Netherlands is the Meuse River, which starts in France and it ends in the North Sea. And it's a source of water for towns in the Netherlands, France, and Belgium. And then there's the Ems River, which empties into the Wadden Sea, which is a part of the North Sea, and it's on the border like of the Netherlands and Germany. And this river is important for industrial transportation. And then there's just like a lot of other rivers like throughout the country, just like Schelde, Roer, Damel, Gelderse, Isel, and Linge. So for the climate, they have a temperate maritime climate, and a lot of their climate's like pretty influenced by the Atlantic Ocean and the North Sea, and it rains every season there. They have mild winters and cool summers. So 55.1% of the land there is used for agriculture, with almost 30% of that being arable land, meaning that it's basically just suitable for crops. And then 1.1% of it's permanent crops, which are just things like grapes and stuff, like you don't have to like constantly replant them. And then 24.2% is permanent pasture, so just livestock and all that. But they do have like a pretty highly developed dairy industry, and a lot of the dairy that they export is cheese, butter, and condensed milk. But they also produce a lot of meat and eggs. And then they're really big on horticulture, um, with their big exports being like tomatoes, cucumbers, cut flowers, other fruits and vegetables. And the flowers that they export there, like a lot of them come from like the famous flower fields, such as the one pictured here, which is one of the things that the Netherlands is known for. And then when it comes to natural hazards, they experience flooding from the sea and the rivers, but like flooding from the sea is a lot more risky just because, or a lot more dangerous just because a lot of the country is below sea level. So for the economy, they have the sixth largest economy in the European Union, and part of that's because they're a really important European transportation hub. They have a GDP of $924.4 billion, with their biggest industries being in food processing, petroleum refining, electrical machinery, and chemicals. And then their biggest imports are machinery and transport equipment, food, clothing, fuel, and chemicals. And their biggest partners for that are China, Germany, Belgium, UK, the US, and Russia. And then their biggest exports are also machinery, transport equipment, and then food and livestock, and then also chemicals, and then manufactured goods. And then their biggest partners for that are Germany, Belgium, UK, France, and Italy. So for the demographics, so the Dutch people themselves are a mix of Saxons, Frisians, and Franks. And Franks are like the people that are like you find them mainly in like France now, or they come from France. And then Saxons also are like originally from that somewhere around there too. And then Frisians are located more in like the northern part of the country, and they have like their own language too, but it's like kind of it's like still a Germanic language too. And then a lot of their immigration comes from Turkey, Morocco, and then also the current and former Dutch colonies. And they're in the demographic transition stage four, meaning that like they're a pretty well developed country and they have like the lower birth rate and death rate and all that now. And then right here we have like a population pyramid that shows how um, there's like more older people than younger people now. Like they have the aging population. So for the languages, there's Dutch, which is also known as Netherlandic, and then there's Frisian, which is spoken in North Holland. And then the two main dialects there are Low Saxon and Low Franconian. And then when it comes to religion, they're not like the most religious country, but like about half the population has no religious affiliation, and then about a quarter of them are Roman Catholic, and then 15.5% are Protestant, about 5% are Muslim. So for nationalism, they're not like they're a pretty left wing country, so the right wing um, groups like still represent a pretty small minority, but they have the Party for Freedom, which is their nationalist right wing political party, and with the House of Representatives, out of 150 seats, they won 20 of them in the 2017 election. And it's the second largest party in the House of Representatives, but they still represent a minority. And on the left, right, or on the right here on the picture, I have the election results from the 2017 election. And even though it looks like they could have a lot of power just because they're like the second largest party, they're still a small minority because they have a ton of different political parties there. And majority of these ones are like left wing parties too. Like you have the Green Party, Socialist Party, and there's even a party for the animals. And then a majority of the parliament is left wing parties, and then the general population just tends to be more tolerant. Like they're really open to like more liberal policies, like a couple of the things that they're known for too for being really like lenient on is that they're more tolerant towards prostitution and cannabis use. So for international relations, they they remain neutral in World War One, and then they also remain neutral throughout World War Two. But then Nazi Germany invaded the Netherlands in 1940, and they like the government had to like basically live in exile in the UK during that time. So after the war ended, the Netherlands decided that the neutrality policy was a failure. So they decided to quickly join all the post-war Western alliances, like such as NATO, and they don't have any international disputes with anybody. But they were involved in the Eastern Ukraine conflict in 2014. Because what happened was there was the Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 that crashed into the rebel held territory in Ukraine while it was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. And the Dutch Safety Board decided to take over the investigation, and they found that the plane was hit by a Russian made missile. And Russia ended up disputing the findings because they claimed that the investigation was like, politically motivated. And these are my references. And that's it. Thank you for watching and listening.